Stand by. A surge in anti-Semitic sentiment, or do we just live in an age where bigots have a bigger bullhorn? Here's what we do know. Reported acts of hate against French Jews have soared since the Middle East erupted a month ago. But the spike in anti-Semitism didn't start on October the 7th. Pre-COVID, social media was already awash with conspiracy theories and tropes about Jews controlling finance and the media. We'll ask about France's present and its past. In 1990, the desecration of Jewish tombstones in the southern city of Carpentras outraged the country, brought out more than 200,000 in the streets of Paris. How many or how few will turn out next Sunday for a march against anti-Semitism that is stoking bitter political divisions over the participation of a far right whose roots go back to Nazi collaboration during the Second World War and who today squarely stand behind Israel as the political landscape moved today in the France 24 debate. We're looking at the French and anti-Semitism. With us, Simone Rodin-Benzaken, Director of the American Jewish Committee in Paris. Thank you for being with us.
Very nice to meet you.
We welcome back as well Marek Haltero's human rights activism has included everything from interfaith dialogue to bringing Palestinians and Israelis together. Your latest book in English is Why the Jews. Thanks for joining us. Marc Lefebvre, founder of the advocacy group Peace Now. Good to see you. How are you?
Fine.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation you have on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. More than 1,000 anti-Semitic acts registered by the French Interior Ministry in the past month alone. That's more than all of last year, with more than 100 arrests. A lot of the hate is online, but there's plenty of graffiti and verbal threats as well in the real world. It's a report by partner station France 2, read by Jean-Émile Jamin.
This French Jewish woman has been left shaken and disturbed. On Sunday, she opened her pizzeria in Villeurbanne and discovered stars of David on the door and back wall of her restaurant.
We discovered them here. The three other stars are different colors and are each marked with the word death.
She was shocked and disgusted and filed a complaint, but soon realized that she had to be extra careful.
When young people come to eat here, I tell them to take off their yarmulke when they leave. I don't want to have the responsibility of something happening that evening. That's it. We have to be vigilant.
Vigilance has multiplied tenfold in front of all the Jewish schools in France. These two men have taken it on themselves to watch over the institutions. Parents and teachers call them the protective fathers. They've been trained by the SPCJ, the Jewish Community Protection Service. They've agreed to talk, but only under anonymity.
We look out for suspicious people, check for abandoned parcels, and I alert my colleagues if there's any reason we need to lock the school gates in the evening.
The volunteers then share their information with both the police and the army.
We've had people passing by filming us, filming the school, questioning some of the arrangements we put in place. People have been staring at us and verbally provoking us.
This man is one of those in need of protection. He has two children who study at a Jewish school, while his wife works there too as a teacher.
What we fear is a massacre. It's the same as what happened in the kibbutz in Israel. If someone comes in with a Kalashnikov, and that person comes in and kills everyone.
As cases of anti-Semitism rise, many French Jews are now keeping a low profile, fearful of being scapegoated for the conflict in the Middle East.
Simone Rodin-Benzaken, we've had other times of tension in the past. How does this compare?
Yes, I think it's very important to remind everybody that indeed this has been going on, hasn't just happened. It's been going on for at least more or less 20 years. When you look at the late 90s, we'd have a few dozen anti-Semitic hate crimes. You go to the year of 2000, we have between 300 and 900 anti-Semitic acts a year. So it's a constant. The anti-Semitism has become structural in French society. What I think is the difference is, first of all, the amount. In a very short time period, we've had a lot of anti-Semitic attacks. You're right. Depending on the nature, we'll have to see. But there have been a lot of anti-Semitic acts, more than two or three times more than last year
Because we had the researcher Jean-Yves Camus on the other night explaining to us there are more acts being reported, but there's also more people coming forward. So in your view, is it a surge in anti-Semitism?
I think it is nevertheless a surge. It's not entirely clear because what we know from previous studies, indeed, is that about 80% of French Jews don't report anti-Semitic acts. We have seen it in our own surveys. About 80% don't report. Has that changed now? It's not entirely clear. But what we do know is that there is a huge amount of fear. I can tell you from a very personal experience, it's the first time in my life that I have people around me everywhere who have experienced anti-Semitism over the past few weeks. Everybody. I myself, I have changed my name on my app. I have changed the name on my door. People I know take off the mezuzah. So there is a sentiment of fear on the one hand, and then very concrete threats, whether it's in Ubers, whether it's on the streets, whether it's in Jewish schools. So there is definitely a threat. It reminds me a little bit of about what happened in 2012.
When there was the attack on the Jewish schools in Toulouse.
It sort of liberated a hate, a passionate hate, that then was sort of legitimized. And that, I think, is slightly different than anything we've seen in previous conflicts, because in 2014, for example, we did have anti-Semitism in the streets, but not to the extent, I think, to this extent. And the other aspect is that what we have in France, now we have everywhere. We have it in Germany, we have it in the United Kingdom, we have it in the United States, we have it in Australia, we have it everywhere.
And you mentioned structural anti-Semitism. What do you mean?
It means that anti-Semitism has become part of French society. It's never gone away. We've never managed to go back.
How does that manifest itself structurally?
Structurally, it means that we have between 300 to 900 anti-Semitic acts a year. Every year. That means basically between 1 to 3 anti-Semitic acts on average a day, for a population that represents less than 1% of the entire French population. And maybe an additional number, between 40 to 60% of all violent hate crimes, racist hate crimes in general, are of anti-Semitic nature. So there is something in our society, and has been going on over the past 2 decades. And let's not forget, people have been killed in 2003, in 2006, in 2012, in 2015. People have been killed in France.
Marc Lefebvre, what's been your experience this past month?
Well, my experience past month is similar to what has been described. I mean, people are, let's say, anxious, concerned. They try to be as much discreet as possible, which is in fact not acceptable. I mean, it's not acceptable for a normal citizen to try to hide himself, hide his identity.
Yeah, because we saw in that report that the restaurant owner telling her customers, take off your yarmulke when you leave.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I live in a Jewish neighborhood where the people are always discreet anyway. But they are more concerned, and it's part of a general framework and a general atmosphere in the French society, not only directed towards the Jewish community. I mean, the society is very eruptive. It's very eruptive. I mean, you have teachers in high school who are slaughtered.
Marc Lefebvre, I'm gonna interrupt you because, apologies, we're having technical issues with your microphone. We're going to try to get that fixed as quick as possible. Marek Alter, you heard Simone Rodon-Benzaken talking about the long arc of this anti-Semitism that's resurfaced over the last couple of decades. Is this your experience as well?
You know, people need to express their aggressivity against a minority. Camus, you spoke about Camus, Albert Camus. He said that democracy is not the power of the majority, but the respect of the minorities. It is very important. The Jews are a minority. They are here for 2,000 years. They came together with the Roman Empire many years ago. But this is a minority of what is French. They are French. At the same time, they have another religion. They have synagogues. They are not going to the church. They have one millionaire Rothschild, one of thousands of few thousand millionaires in France, but Rothschild, they said a Jew came from outside, Herschel Rothschild. You read Proust, the writer Proust. He was completely assimilated Jew. He was. But in his books, he's talking about the strange relationship with his friends, no Jews.
But just a point on this.
Yeah.
This is important because, just to remind our viewers who don't know all of French history, this was a period, the late 19th century, early 20th century, where there was a huge surge in anti-Semitism. There was the Dreyfus Affair. Then, between the two wars, there's a period where France is a place that welcomes the Jews who are fleeing elsewhere.
Welcomes, and
there's World War II.
In the same time, you had, movements, political parties, anti-Semitic political parties between the two wars. After the Second World War, the people discovered what happened. Discovered Auschwitz, the Shoah, 6 million of people, children, killed by the Germans. In France, with the help of the collaborators. So they have a bad consciousness. And the bad consciousness was our protection. I remember when I arrived to Paris, I read the first book. I am born in Warsaw, for those who don't know. The first book I read in French was the Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, a philosopher, about the Jewish question. And I was very upset. So I came from Warsaw, for Warsaw Ghetto. So I want to see him. He asked me, "Who are you?" I said, "I am a young man born in Warsaw Ghetto." He said, "Please, come in." This was the first reaction. And then you have a new generation, a second generation. For them, the Shoah is an old story. This is like the Cruzeros.
Let me bring in Marc Lefebvre on this.
Yes.
We got your microphone fixed?
Apparently, yes.
Okay. So it's something important that Marie Calter said. This idea that the guilt after World War II, that was the protection for the Jews. Is that your feeling?
Yes, exactly. And it was a protection. And then coming back to our present time, the creation of the State of Israel was the further protection. The fact that the Jews can gather themselves and can build a country, can build a state to defend themselves was another protection, also for the Jews abroad who didn't live in Israel. And the barbaric attack of October 7th has somehow hurt this sentiment, this feeling of strength with the state of Israel, as if the state of Israel is no longer able to protect its own citizens. Therefore, in the mind, in the subconscious of the Jews living abroad, somehow the image of Israel as a state who is here to defend the Jews everywhere has vanished or has been deeply affected.
Is that your personal view? Because not all Jews believe that it's up to Israel to protect them when they...
Well, I'm French and Israeli, and I'm talking in those tense period, I tend to lean towards what's going on and what is being analyzed and felt in Israel. And that's the feeling in Israel, that the state no longer protects us. And I think that somehow, for all the Jews abroad who are living, who are sharing the horrors of what has happened in Israel, there is also this feeling that the state of Israel has failed in protecting the Jews, and therefore it contributes to the feeling of insecurity, even abroad.
I want to get back to the context with what's going on in the Middle East in a moment. Just one final question on what Marie Calter was talking about, and this relates to something that was said earlier by Simone. Is there a French specificity to anti-Semitism here, or is anti-Semitism everywhere and it's the same?
Each country has his own relationship with the Jews, with the image of the Jews. Sartre said that we are Jews in the eyes, dans le regard of the no-Jews. The anti-Semite make me to be Jew, he said. And I was very upset about it because I don't need the anti-Semite to know who I am. But you have, your question is very good. You have today, as you said, anti-Semitic activities all around the world. You saw in Germany, this school with the name of Anne Frank, they decided to change the name because Anne Frank today is not a good name.
They're still debating it, by the way. It's not been
This is a debate, but they want to do it.
Right.
The French relationship with the Jews is very special because this, like the General de Gaulle said, this people who is very strong, proud, but in the same time, when you said that the people is proud, this is positive and negative. So today, maybe I'm wrong. What happened in the 7th of October this year liberated, especially what happened now in Gaza, the bombing of Gaza. The images, we live not with books. We don't read books. We see images on the TV. And what happened the 7th of October was horrible for me. This means the Nazis are back. The Nazis are back. But for the majority of the population, they forgot already what happened in the 7th October. They see the
daily images out of Gaza.
Gaza. And this liberated the animosity against the Jews. First one, what we have to say, 10% of our population in France are now Muslims. They don't mean that all the Muslims are anti-Jews. There's Semites also. So they're not anti-Semitic. They're anti-Jews. But you have a very strong movement, the Brotherhood, Islamic Brotherhood. They control 32% of the mosques in France. And this is very important. Today you have no political parties, no ideology, so no dreams, the only religion.
All right, let's talk. We're going to talk about politics now, but before we do, just a quick question about this line of inquiry that's being undertaken by authorities in this country. We reported on it last week, a wave of Stars of David spray painted on buildings in Paris. Could it have come from abroad? Police searching for at least one, possibly more suspects after the arrest of a 29-year-old and a 31-year-old Moldovan. They say they're tourists who came to Paris. According to the Paris prosecutor, they acted on command. They claim to have acted on command of a third party for compensation, which was backed up by a Russian language conversation on their telephone. Simone Rodon-Benzaken, have you had your thoughts on this? Because again, this blurs the line that there could be the Kremlin making mischief and stirring up this feeling.
It's absolutely possible. It wouldn't be the first time that the Kremlin has been exploiting situations across Europe, whether it's the financing of far-right parties across Europe, whether it's propaganda on social media. It wouldn't be surprising, given also that there is a certain alliance today between Russia, between Iran, between sort of what President Bush would have called the axis of evil. But I want to go back to what about the specificity about the anti-Semitism in France. I think there is a specificity, and I think Marie Calter is also right about the fact that each country is specific as well. But there is something very peculiar about France, about the fact that we've had over the past 20 years really an assembly of different forms of anti-Semitism. It's multiform. It's not just one form. We have the far right that still exists, that is still present in France. We have the anti-Semitism, which is called new anti-Semitism, which is the anti-Semitism related to the hatred of Israel. We have the anti-Semitism from the far left that goes into that. And we have the anti-Semitism, again, as Marie Calter said, from within the Muslim community. So we have all of this. And it's interesting because there were moments, for example, in 2014, called Jour de colère, Day of Anger, where all of this had come together, where it was a big demonstrations in the streets of Paris, originally against the gay marriage bill that was done by François Hollande, and for where you had people in the street that have nothing in common, from the far right, from the far left, from within the banlieue, have nothing in common. And the one thing that they did, they were in the streets of Paris and shouted, France, 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 Jews out of France, France is not yours. So there is sort of a coming together of different extremes that exists within France, and that is very specific, I think, in France, but that we are now starting to see elsewhere. Germany, for example, we had mostly far-right anti-Semitism. We now also see anti-Semitism coming from within the Muslim community. The United States, we had Pittsburgh, of course, but we now also have anti-Semitism coming from campuses, from pro-Palestinian movements, from Islamist movement, from the far left within the Democratic Party. So I would say that France was a little bit of at the forefront of now a global phenomenon that is starting to spread across the world.
Marc Lefebvre, you agree?
Well, I think this phenomena expresses itself in France differently, because France is a secular country where the relation of the French citizen towards religion and towards belonging to a community is completely different that the same relation in Germany or in England or in the United States. So the French people had a tendency to not to listen to those emergences of anti-Semitic acts over the last 10 years, because they don't want to talk about religion. They don't want to see the religion being a center in the political or in the social life. And also because a majority of the Jews in France do not see themselves as, they do not actively belong to a community. They are not active in any kind of community.
Which, by the way, the same is true for Muslims. They've done studies. There are a lot of lapsed Muslims in this country.
I mean, a majority of the Jews in France do not, when you ask themselves, do you belong to a local community, the answer is no. So the French is a secular country, so the relationship towards religion and religious conflict is completely different. But what has happened now, what is happening now, the size of and the nature of the manifestation creates a situation where the rank and file French citizen cannot avoid to address this issue. And I think, for example, you look at the Republic Square, where you have this statue symbolizing the Republic. The first pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, I wouldn't say pro-Palestinian, I say pro-Hamas demonstration which took place, you had people shouting, Allah al-Akbar.
But that was a banned demonstration.
Okay, that was a banned demonstration with presence of French elected people, okay? And you have this, the leader of the Green Party Miss Lemonnier, who I don't remember her name. First, she reacted negatively when she heard that the cry Allah Akbar was shouted at the Place de la République, the symbol of the French Republic. So she expressed some criticism. She was overwhelmed with threats and SMSs and attacking her because she dared to criticize this. And then she apologized. She apologized. She said, well, I have been told that Allah Akbar is a religious expression. It's not a cry of war, a cry of... And she apologizes. These
far left politicians, by the way, have said that they too have gotten on their private
phones. She apologized, and I think most of the
in the other direction, they say.
Most of the French people do not accept that. Do not accept that, and this is why this is very important that the manifestation which is taking place is first of all to defend the Republic.
Let's talk about that, because next Sunday, just to give context for our viewers here, this anti-Semitism march, it was called for by the Speaker of the lower House of Parliament and the Speaker of the upper House of Parliament. It's dividing political leaders, particularly with the far right being in attendance. Siobhan Silk has more.
More than 1,000 anti-Semitic acts have been recorded in France since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war. In the face of this rise in suspected hate crime, the leaders of France's Senate and National Assembly have called for an unprecedented march, bringing together politicians of all stripes to condemn anti-Semitism. They say the Republic is in danger, its very foundations under attack, and there's a need to rise up and make it clear that France does not accept anti-Semitism. All of France's political parties have been invited to take part. The far-right National Rally was among the first to accept.
I will take part. Our party president will be there. All of our elected representatives will be there. And I call on all of our members and voters to come and join this march.
That's sitting badly with the government and left-wing parties. They say the National Rally is not welcome, given the party founder and presidential candidate's father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, is a convicted Holocaust denier.
In my opinion, the National Rally has no place in this march. But it's a public march, which anyone is free to take part in or not, according to their conscience.
At the other end of the spectrum, the leftist France Unbowed is not taking part. Its leader, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, believes the stated purpose of the march is a pretext. He's called it a meeting for the friends of unconditional support for the massacre. A step too far for other leftist politicians who are now distancing themselves from Mélenchon.
That's Jean-Luc Mélenchon's usual over-the-top words. It's finished. We've cut ties with Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Our alliance is buried. It's over.
A march that's meant to unify France's parties is already highlighting the cracks.
The left tearing itself apart, kind of like what we've seen a little bit inside the Labour Party to a lesser degree over in the UK. Simon Rodon-Melensken, the presence of the National Rally, they say we're not an anti-Semitic party. We had Jordan Bardella, the president of the party, saying that Jean-Marie Le Pen is not anti-Semitic, even though he's been convicted 6 times for anti-Semitic speech.
So first of all, let me start out with the first thing. I think it's extremely important that this march is taking place. We spoke earlier about the solitude of the Jewish community, about the fact that there has been a huge rise of anti-Semitism. Jews are afraid. Jews need solidarity. Jews need to know that the rest of the French Republic understands that anti-Semitism is not a problem for the Jewish community alone, but a problem for the country as a whole. That's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, the National Front, the Rassemblement National, previously known National Front, has anti-Semitic roots. Of course, there are still anti-Semitic people around Marine Le Pen. Of course, Jordan Bardella, by denying that Jean-Marie Le Pen is anti-Semitic, is denying the very essence of what the roots are of the Rassemblement National. But I would say, just as Minister Olivier Véran said, it's a public march. We didn't ask ourselves the question on January 11th, after the hypercacher attacks and the Charlie Hebdo attacks. It was a march for the Republic against terrorism, and whoever wanted to participate did participate. The fact that we are actually discussing it and going into the politics between the far left and the far right is frankly, it's indecent. And the fact that Mélenchon himself is every single time instrumentalizing the issue, is really creating further hatred, putting the Jews in the corner, pretending. I mean, at the end of the day, what is it? It's pretending to say that actually Jews are massacring Palestinians and Jews are far right, which, by the way, he has previously already said. So he's really marginalizing Jews and actually putting an additional target on their already very fragile situation. So I think it's very important to say we have to march, and I hope that thousands of people will be in the streets again to march for the Republic and let the political games out of this.
A lot's happened since October the 7th, and one of the problems in this country is that sometimes the lines get blurred between Judaism and Zionism. We had last week Israel's ambassador to the United Nations wearing a Star of David at the UN Security Council, the harboring of the symbol of the Nazis forced Jews to wear during World War II, triggering criticism from the Yad Vashem Memorial in Israel itself. And then, you know, Marc Lefebvre, there was at the beginning of the, right after October the 7th, there was a march and a rally near the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower was lit up in the blue and white.
I participated
of the Israeli flag. A lot of French people who feel sympathetic to the Palestinian cause said to me, we were horrified by what happened on October the 7th. Would it not have been better to put a peace symbol up on the Eiffel Tower? And because for them, it's Israel versus Palestine when you light up the Eiffel Tower.
You know,
you're
talking to a founder of the Peace Now movement, and I was the spokesman.
I'm asking the question.
It's not the time to talk about peace. I'm sorry. It's the time to talk about deterrence against barbarism. It's the time to defend ourselves. To defend ourselves in Israel, to defend the Jews everywhere in the world.
But the question is that this is by putting the Israeli flag on the Eiffel Tower.
Yes.
It's a sign of solidarity. Yes. But is it also? Can you understand it? For some people, that's interpreted as Israel against Palestine.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think, you know, in Israel, people are very sensitive to what's happening abroad. And every single manifestation against Israel or pro-Palestinian is broadcasted everywhere. And there is even an overfeeling, a misunderstanding of what actually is taking place. It's taking place abroad. So, and they are very sensitive to every sign of solidarity. And I think this was the minimum, which was what was done was the minimum to be done in a very peculiar, in a very particular and very tragic moment. I have personal friends where family members of friends of mine have been slaughtered. And some of the members of those families, we don't know what happened to them. We don't know where they are. So that's actually the feeling. And I think this feeling is also shared in some way by the Jews abroad. And for the moment, it's not the time to talk about peace or reconciliation.
Can I just add one thing? when the terrorist attacks in France happened, it was so important for us as French people to have solidarity from across the world in the face of terrorism. Whether it was in the streets of Paris where heads of states came to march with us, whether it was lighting up the Empire State Building with the French flag, it was so important. So that's what currently was going on. Israel faced the worst massacre, the worst program it ever experienced since its creation. So that France, as a country, defender of human rights, expresses its solidarity with the people of Israel, there's nothing more natural.
I just wanted to add something, excuse me.
Yeah.
I mean, after the Bataclan massacre and the Hypercacher massacre, I still remember the only chief of state who was not present was President Obama. And I will never forgive him. Never.
Marie Calter was talking about how people don't, for them a month ago seems like a long time. And what we're describing is that moment on October the 9th.
Yes.
Looking ahead to next Sunday, though, it's legitimate for those who see the amount of civilians who've been killed in Gaza to want to express solidarity with them as well. So what tone do you have at this march on Sunday? Will it be different from the march?
It's a march for France. It's a march against anti-Semitism. It's a march for what French Jews are experiencing on French soil, and for the French Republic.
Yes.
And that's what it's about. So it's not about Palestinians, whether if there is another pro-Palestinian march, and there will be, I have no doubt, in the coming weeks, let it be, whatever. But this is something entirely different. This is about the French Republic, about attacks against French citizens on French soil.
No, she's right. You have three problems here. The Middle East problem, and you are right, we have to speak already about peace because we have to, I was involved in the Oslo negotiations. I brought Arafat to Rabin. He don't wanted to see him. He did it. He was killed. People who want peace, the extremists dislike them. Martin Luther King was killed. Gandhi was killed. Here in France, Jaurès was killed. He wanted peace in the time of the First World War. So this is one problem. The second problem is a problem of humanitarian mean hostages. This is the first time you have 240 hostages, children. And nobody is talking about it. Yes, the Jews are talking about, not all of the Jews. The families, the familiar people, the fathers, the mothers of the children, they want the children back. And we have, the Jews, we have a law. First one, to buy not only people who are hostages alive, their bodies, if they're dead, we have to buy them, to give them opportunity to live for the eternity normally in the cemeteries. And you have, as you said, the problem of the Jewish minority here in France. The minority was more important today. This is, after all, the first Jewish community in the Western Europe.
Largest community in Europe.
The largest.
Ancient.
And she's in danger. The community is in danger today. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope that I'm wrong. It is a possibility if we know reaction to the how to say that, comment on dit, le rejet.
The rejection.
Rejection of the Jews. that we will have a kind of a crystal night in France. People, I know that young people, they are ready to destroy synagogues, schools. This is the first time in the history of modern France that you have police and army to protect the Jewish cultural centers in France. This is the first time. This is something. So the march, what they're prepared, and this is very good that it's not the Jews are preparing this. This the
elected officials.
But it is a danger that we will be not enough in the streets. You spoke about what happened in Carpentras, the cemetery of the Carpentras.
In 1990.
We were 1 million. And the president of the nation, Mitterrand, came with us. All the heads of the Catholic Church were in the streets. The Courtrai, the cardinal, was in the street. And I hope that Macron will come. This will be good for him and good for us. Will be good for him. This will be a surprise.
Because it was a surprise on the day. Mitterrand showed up unannounced and took part in the...
Yes. So, but we have to be minimum 200, 300,000. This means you have a reaction of the French population who wants to live in a democratic state, secular state, as he said, where all the minorities, religious minorities, has the same right. But I'm afraid a little bit. The initiative is fantastic, but what will happen Sunday, I don't know. So this is the three problems have connections for sure, have connections. But I repeat, what is very important today is the liberation of the hostages, first one. And
just the liberation of the hostages, because again, I'm haunted by what you said earlier about the fact that people are seeing this stream of images coming out of the Gaza Strip of women and children being killed as well, and the civilian death toll is going up.
Right, you are completely right. This is the war. We saw it in Ukraine. We see it in Yemen. 500,000 deaths already. Nobody's speaking about it. This is horrible. A war has provoked reactions, solidarity, but the war has to be finished very quick. If not, so for us, the war in Ukraine is a daily problem. So we are listening the radio, the TV, watching the TV, and we already 600,000 deaths in Ukraine, 600,000 deaths. So what happened in Gaza is not very nice. This is the reason what I said, that we have already, and your question was very good, to propose something after. What will be after? After, we have to negotiations. And we have to make peace.
Simon rightly points out that Sunday's march is about France.
Yes, it is.
So how do you break?
It's about the fact that the Republic.
So
is at
and
stake.
you heard Marie Calter worrying aloud about the number of people who will show up.
Yes,
how do you appeal? My question, Marc Lefebvre, is how do you appeal to bring it to cross that bridge and break through this?
Well, I think first of all, I mean, there is an overexposure in the media of the position of the extreme right and the extreme left. We are falling into that trap.
Totally.
They are manipulating us. I think the media have to expose the mainstream who has decided on this unique and worthy initiative and positive initiative. In order to ensure, as Marek said, a maximum of attendance, we must shut the voice
of extremism down.
Of the extreme who are manipulating us.
Give moderates more of a voice. That'll be the final word for now. I want to thank you, Marc Lefebvre. I want to thank Simone Rodin-Medzecken. I want to thank as well Marek Alter. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.